Yeah, in a chaotic season for Chelsea, and I suppose in one where, to a certain degree, the manager's tactics have been questioned, but I think he's in a bit of a thankless situation. It is one that has actually suited Cole Palmer, and he's risen above it all. I think evidently there's an element of, well, I mean, first of all, just because of what City were as a team, it was difficult to break through. But equally, I think there's an element of him maybe benefiting from just a slightly greater freedom that Pochettino would give a player like that rather than Guardiola. And he's gone to another level. I mean, it's one of those moves that worked for everyone, and it certainly worked for Cole Palmer. And yeah, I mean, it's we've said this so many times now. The price surprised people, but I think the impact surprised people even more. I mean, everyone knew he was a good player, but to come straight in like this and not just go from someone who was a potential talent for Chelsea, but a difference maker, and yeah, one of the players of the season, and has to be in one, and I suppose the widespread teams of the season.
Jason, do you want to pick up that point that Miguel made about the way that he is flourishing under Pochettino in a way that he might not have done under Guardiola?
Well, I think Guardiola has a record of allowing players to leave who want to leave. And I was in the Super Cup in Athens at the start of the season, and it was quite interesting because obviously Cole Palmer scored, and we all thought, well, this is going to be Cole Palmer's season at Manchester City. But afterwards, Guardiola is very, very lukewarm about Palmer and his prospects at City. And we've seen in the past that he's allowed players to leave. I think it was one of those deals that worked for City at the time, partly to help them with their own PSR compliance, and that they can bank all this money for an academy player. It's pure profit. It seemed like a big fee, 40 odd million pounds for him. And obviously it worked for Cole Palmer. I think Palmer was quite impatient. I think he wanted to play. He wanted to be in the first team. I don't think Guardiola could give him those guarantees. So I think he was looking for the right move for him. And he saved Chelsea's season. It's almost single-handedly. He is the shining hope for their season. Obviously, they've got the FA Cup semi-final on Saturday. He has been the one bright spark in what has been a pretty dismal campaign, considering how much money they've spent. And actually, he's looking an absolute bargain again at a club that's spent £1 billion and wasted an awful lot of that money. Suddenly, they've got this diamond on their hands who's doubled, or probably trebled his value already in this last season. But I think the move worked for everyone. Although I think if you ask City, I didn't think they expected Palmer to be quite this good, and probably if he was going to be this good, they would have probably fought even harder to keep him.
Even on this night, where they got their 6 goals, they've somehow, in, as you say, Jason, what's been a bad season, they've somehow contrived to make some of the headlines negative ones. Miguel, there's the Sun version of the penalty row. That it was extraordinary. I mean, Palmer is a fantastic penalty taker, arguably the most prolific, the best, the most assured in the Premier League this season. What were Jackson and Madueke thinking?
I genuinely couldn't believe it. But I suppose, I mean, touching on what Jason's saying there as well, it's almost in keeping with Chelsea's season.
Yeah.
That even a win this comfortable, that could be a launch pad moment in itself. And they've had a few of those, to be fair. But they've somehow contrived to make it an issue, and where rather than talking more about Palmer's performance or what this means in terms of the football, we're talking about this, and it inevitably leads into questions about discipline. I mean, it would be remarkable in any situation, but I think in this, where Palmer, he hasn't just proved himself one of the best penalty takers at the club, but the best penalty taker in the league. So it's incredible. I mean, was there some sort of agreement between the players or something like that? That's my only kind of logical question. But the whole situation, I mean, even the fact that Jackson got involved after the initial argument, it was incredible.
Jason, Pochettino has just told Sky Sports, this is the last time I'll accept that kind of behaviour, which is much stronger than managers usually go after this situation. They usually say, I'd like to see my players wanting to be involved.
Yeah, no, absolutely. He's completely right. He cannot allow this to happen again. It's a complete lack of discipline from the players. I was talking to somebody at Chelsea earlier in the season, and they said one of the big issues at the club, which is kind of obvious, is that they've bought too many young players. And the problem with if you have too many young players is that essentially a lot of them will play for themselves. They won't play for the team. You need more of a mix of experienced players who want to help just win games because it helps their career, prolong their career. With younger players, a lot of them still proving themselves. They want to be the main attraction. They want to be the star of the show. And that is completely unacceptable, selfish behaviour from those players involved tonight. Not Cole Palmer, by the way. He is the penalty taker. He is incredible from the penalty spot. But we've seen arguments in the past, or disagreements in the past, whether Raheem Sterling's going to take penalties or Cole Palmer's going to take penalties. Pochettino has to get on top of this. I would have been tempted as a manager to sub them both at that point. I know players went off later on, but I've been tempted to take them both off. The game was won. Make the point then to them, this is unacceptable because they can't carry on like this. What happens if they get a penalty on Saturday at Wembley? They're going to argue over that. It could be the decisive spot kick in the FA Cup semi-final. So he has to be strong on this now. He has to make it very clear to these players. But I think it's shining a little light on some of the problems at Chelsea with some of these young players, and maybe some of their attitudes aren't quite right at the moment. They need to develop and they need to become more professional. And I think the mix of players in Chelsea is not quite right. There's too many young players, not enough experienced players, not enough players who've been around the block and know how to win games and actually sort of guide them a little bit more. Conor Gallagher did his best. He's the captain, but obviously some of those young players let him down.